Two residents at a local shelter are sharing how they went from homelessness, of living on the streets, to looking forward to a future and finally tying the knot.
Jimmy Power met Christina Quinn on a cot in a Dublin shelter, and 3 years later he asked her to marry him, with no address to put on the form. 771,000 people were counted homeless in America last year, the highest number ever recorded. And buried in that count are couples falling in love with nothing but a curfew and a stranger's rulebook deciding who sleeps next to who. But somehow, some still make it down the aisle. Falling for each other costs them nothing. Getting the system to admit it happened is the real fight.
Lost my home, children, wife, all that good stuff. Had to come stay here. There was more resources here.
Jimmy first noticed Christina at the Salvation Army's Granby shelter, where she had already been living almost 8 years after aging out of state care at 18. He moved in a few years later, and for a while they were just two people who said good morning in the same hallway. It took a year of being friends before either one said anything. Their first date was the cinema, and a McDonald's ice cream afterward, popcorn smell still on their coats. The kind of night most couples forget by Thursday. They never forgot it. For two people with a curfew instead of a front door, that hour belonged to nobody but them. Falling for someone in a shelter doesn't get you a key to hand over. It gets you a curfew, and often a room on the opposite side of a wall from the person you fell for. Most shelters separate residents by gender, and the ones that don't usually still ban couples from sharing a bed. Bob Erlenbush, who runs a homelessness coalition in Sacramento, put it plainly. Every survey his team has ever run, straight couples, gay couples, it doesn't matter, ends up finding people sleeping outside because the shelter system won't let them stay together. Most nights, the real choice is a locked door between you and the person you love, or two sleeping bags zipped into one against the cold. On the worst nights of winter, some couples pick the tent. Every single time, warmth loses to being next to each other. Even the couples who stay inside the system don't get privacy the way anyone else would understand it. A bus stop bench, a library table because it's warm and nobody checks how long you sit there. A waiting room chair at a clinic where the receptionist eventually stops asking why you're both still there. A lot of these relationships get built there, not on a date night, but in the 15 minutes between one appointment and the next, holding a conversation together in whatever public space will have you both. Ask couples who've actually done this what the relationship is for day to day, and the answer is logistics more often than romance. One person stands guard over the bags and the blankets while the other showers at the drop-in centre, because bags left alone for 10 minutes tend to disappear. One person waits in the food line while the other holds their spot at the shelter intake window 3 blocks away, because both lines open at the same hour, and only one of you can be in 2 places. A relationship out here is a 2-person survival team first and a romance second. And the ones that last are usually the ones that figured that out early. Families with children are the fastest growing part of this population, up nearly 40% in a single year, to more than 250,000 people. And a lot of those families are exactly this. 2 adults split the work of staying alive so well that a courthouse eventually agreed to call it a marriage. Say a couple gets past all of that and decides to make it legal. That's when the paperwork finds them. A marriage license needs 2 photo IDs and in most places a social security number for both people. A birth certificate needs a mailing address to send it to. A replacement ID needs proof of where you sleep, and a sidewalk on 4th Street doesn't count at the DMV counter. Investigators at the Government Accountability Office found the same bottleneck again and again. The people without a permanent address are often the exact people who struggle hardest to get the one document that says who they are. Lose that folder once to rain or a shelter sweep or someone going through your bag while you sleep, and the whole climb starts over. The workaround, when one exists, is a letter on a shelter's letterhead standing in for a lease. Somebody with an office and a stapler has to vouch that you exist before the government agrees that you do. Say the paperwork clears. There's still a number standing between a couple and the ceremony. And it's a small one. Evelyn Adams and Rocky Bartlett had been together 22 years, living with their dog in a wooded lot outside Tampa, when they finally decided to marry. They didn't stall for 2 decades over doubt. They stalled because a marriage license cost $93, and neither of them had it. It took strangers hearing their story on the news, a chapel offering the ceremony for free, someone donating a dress and a tuxedo, before Evelyn finally walked down an aisle in the same year she'd already spent 22 of them loving the same man. $93 kept 2 decades of commitment unofficial, longer than the relationship itself took to build. There's a twist buried in the paperwork though, and it turns the whole thing upside down. For a lot of couples, actually getting married can cost them money they're already surviving on. Anyone receiving supplemental security income, which is the disability check a huge share of unhoused adults depend on, gets treated differently the moment they marry. 2 single people on that benefit each collect their own separate check. The same 2 people, married, get bumped onto a joint rate that runs about 25% lower combined than what they had living together unmarried. Advocates call it the marriage penalty. The government asks a couple to prove their relationship is real, then fines them for proving it. So why do it? Why take a benefit cut to sign a piece of paper that doesn't come with a house? Because a marriage certificate is one of the only documents that still works when nothing else does. If your partner ends up in a hospital bed and can't speak for themselves, most states let a spouse step in and make the call by default. An unmarried partner, even one who's shared a tent with you for 22 years, usually has no such standing and needs a separate legal form that's easy to skip when you're busy surviving the week. A wedding ring doesn't fix an address problem, but it fixes that one. And for a lot of these couples, that's worth more than the money they lose. And here's the part that surprises almost everyone who hasn't lived it. The wedding isn't the hardest part. What comes after is. Marriage doesn't come with a lease attached, and it doesn't come with a bank account either. Try opening one without a permanent address, and most tellers will slide the form back across the counter before you finish filling it in. So whatever a couple earns, day labour, a cash tip, a cheque from a temp agency, tends to move through their hands instead of piling up behind them. There's nothing to compound. A good week gets eaten by a bad one before either of them can call it savings. Jimmy and Christina got married at a registrar's office in Dublin's city centre, almost exactly a year after he proposed, and they walked back out the same doors onto the same housing wait list they'd been standing on before the ceremony. 2 incomes on paper still can't outrun what a deposit and first month's rent cost in most cities now. The same system that finally agreed to marry them still can't find them a key. So the life they build afterward isn't built out of a mortgage or a joint account. It's built out of the same cot, the same curfew, the same intake form. Except now there are 2 names on it instead of 1. And neither of them has to sleep zipped into a shelter bed alone at night. there's still no door they get to close together. Not at the shelter, not in the tent, not for a long time after the ceremony. Still no door. Still the same wait list. But there are 2 names on it now instead of 1, and that changes what the waiting actually feels like. And that's the part nobody puts in the wedding photos. For Evelyn and Rocky, the ceremony didn't end their homelessness by itself, but it ended the part where the world got to pretend they weren't a family. Not long after the wedding, the venue that hosted them helped connect the couple to a federal housing program, and they moved into an apartment in Tampa together, with the dog that had slept beside them in the woods for 3 years. For most couples like them, that apartment never comes. Some spend a decade married before a unit opens up. The marriage is sometimes the only stable thing they get to keep. The one line on the intake form that never changes, no matter how many shelters, tents, or wait lists come after it. Maybe the real definition of home was never a lease or a mortgage. Maybe it's just one person who keeps showing up. Cot or no cot, wait list or no wait list, benefit cut or no benefit cut. Jimmy and Christina are still together. Evelyn and Rocky are still together, this time with 4 walls around them and a dog that finally gets to sleep somewhere warm. The rest of the 771,000 are still waiting on a system that asks them to prove they exist before it'll admit they love someone. It's easy to look at someone sleeping outside and assume love is the one thing they can't afford. The couples in this story spent years proving the opposite. It might be the only thing they could actually afford. The one asset a shelter sweep can't confiscate and a waitlist can't cancel. So the next time somebody says a person like this has nothing, it's worth asking what that word nothing is actually leaving out.